They locked up one man and lost an entire generation. Before we begin, take a deep breath. What you're about to hear is one of the most emotional stories you'll ever come across. A story that exposes how one mistake, one prejudice, can destroy generations. Pushpin, click here to subscribe to Wealth and Wounds so you never miss stories that the world tries to forget. Medium skin tone hand pointing right at wealth_wounds. Because some stories don't just need to be told, they need to be remembered. Malcolm Reed had the kind of hands that told his story before his mouth ever could. Rough, grease-stained, cracked from years of fixing engines, bending steel, and building cars that would never bear his name. He was 34, a mechanic in Atlanta, a father, a husband, a man who believed that hard work could silence prejudice, that respect could be earned if he just kept his head down and stayed humble. Every morning, Malcolm kissed his wife, Tasha, and their 6-year-old daughter, Ari, before heading out. They were his reason. They were his peace. But peace doesn't last long when you live in a world that already wrote your story before you got a chance to speak. That Tuesday morning, the news played on the shop TV. Another case, another headline, another suspect that looked just like him. He sighed. He wiped his hands. And he told himself, that'll never be me. He didn't know, in just 3 days, his name would be all over the news too. It started like any other job. A wealthy client had called in for a quick fix on a black SUV, the kind of car that turned heads in poor neighborhoods. Malcolm went to pick it up from the client's gated home. But fate, or maybe something darker, had a different plan. As he walked up the driveway, adjusting his uniform, a neighbor across the street peeked through her blinds. She didn't see a mechanic with a company badge. She saw a black man near a luxury vehicle. She dialed 911. Her voice trembled as she said the words that would change Malcolm's life forever. I think someone's trying to steal a car. Minutes later, blue and red lights painted the walls. Malcolm raised his hands before he even heard the siren stop. Officer, I work for. He didn't finish. They threw him on the hood, pressed his face into metal still warm from the sun. Inside the car, his paperwork, his work order, was sitting right there. But none of that mattered. They called it suspicious activity. He called it humiliation. And when the homeowner finally came outside, furious, demanding to know what was happening, it was too late. The damage was done. Someone had filmed it. The video went viral. But not for the reasons you'd expect. The clip was edited, cut, twisted. Suddenly, Malcolm wasn't a mechanic. He was the suspect who tried to run. And within hours, he was behind bars. Courtrooms have a strange way of killing hope quietly. You walk in thinking the truth will set you free. But truth doesn't stand a chance when power already picked a side. The prosecutor painted Malcolm as a criminal with a suspicious past. He had no record, not even a parking ticket. But in a world built on assumptions, his skin was enough evidence. His lawyer, a public defender drowning in dozens of cases, barely said his name right. Every argument felt half-hearted. Every objection, ignored. Tasha sat behind him every day, holding Ari's hand, praying for justice. But when the jury came back, none of those prayers mattered. Guilty. A word so sharp, it cut through every dream he ever had. 10 years. 10 years for a crime that didn't even happen. Malcolm looked at Tasha one last time before the deputies led him away. Promise me, he whispered. Don't let Ari forget me. She nodded through tears. She didn't know that promise would be harder to keep than she could imagine. If you're still watching, you feel it too. That tightness in your chest. That anger. Stories like Malcolm's are not just stories, they are warnings. Subscribe right now to Wealth and Wounds so we can keep telling the stories others want buried. Pushpin, click here, medium skin tone hand pointing right. Years passed like winter wind, cold and endless. Tasha tried everything. She filed appeals. She begged reporters. But in a system designed to silence the poor, her voice vanished. Ari grew up visiting her father behind glass. She stopped bringing her toys. Then she stopped talking about him altogether. By year 5, the bills piled up. By year 7, Tasha lost the house. By year 9, she stopped wearing her wedding ring. When Malcolm finally got a call that an Innocence Project had taken interest in his case, it was already too late. Tasha had remarried. Ari, now 16, refused to visit. One morning, a volunteer lawyer named Cynthia Moore reopened the file. She found inconsistencies everywhere. No fingerprints, no DNA, no witness but the caller who thought she saw a crime. Within months, Malcolm's conviction was overturned. He walked out of prison a free man. But not a whole one. Outside the gates, no one waited. No family. No friends. Just cameras. The same kind of flashing lights that took everything from him now followed him again, this time to celebrate justice. But justice came a decade too late. He went back to his old neighborhood, but the garage was gone. Ari had changed schools. Tasha's new husband was a police officer. The irony wasn't lost on him. One night, Malcolm drove to the house where his daughter lived. He parked across the street. Through the window, he saw her laughing with friends. She looked happy, peaceful, normal. He wanted to knock, to explain. But how do you tell your daughter that you missed her entire childhood because the world saw you as something you weren't? He sat there for an hour, then quietly drove away. But before he left, he dropped a letter in the mailbox. It read, "Ari, they took my time, but they won't take my love. I'll always be your father. Always. Dad." That was the last anyone heard from Malcolm Reed. Years later, Ari became a civil rights lawyer. She never spoke about her father publicly. Until one day, while defending a young man falsely accused of theft, she paused mid-sentence. Her voice cracked. "Your Honor," she said softly, "I know what injustice looks like, because I've seen what it does to families." That case changed her career and her life. She started a foundation named Reed's Hope for those wrongfully convicted and forgotten. Malcolm's story, once buried, became a symbol. And the world finally realized. They didn't just imprison one man. They imprisoned a legacy. In 2035, on the 25th anniversary of Malcolm's conviction, Reed's Hope Foundation won a national award. Tasha attended quietly, sitting in the back, tears in her eyes. She watched her daughter stand on stage, radiant and strong. "My father," Ari said, "wasn't a criminal. He was a victim of a system that confused blackness with guilt. But they couldn't destroy him, because I'm still here." The crowd rose to its feet. And in that moment, one truth became clear. You can bury a man, but you can't bury what he stood for.